And right now, to analyze the meeting between two prime ministers deeper, we have our guest, Andrii Osadchuk, Ukrainian MP. Good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here.
It's good to see you again. So let me start off because there were some very warm words today. And I think I just want to quote what Prime Minister Tusk said, is that Ukraine can count on Poland, that there's no force in the world, in Poland or anywhere else, that can undermine the solidarity and friendship of those two countries. Now, this sounds really great. It's wonderful to see this, but how realistic truly are those words given today's precarious situation, especially with agriculture in Europe and Ukraine?
Look, when we discuss a lot of difficult issues in relations between our countries, first of all, we shall keep in mind that everyone in the world has its own interest, and that's why the countries shall interact and keep dialogue. But when in particular we're talking about Poland and Ukraine, we always shall keep in mind bigger picture. And I am always repeating the model which was suggested, I think, more than 70 years ago by the great son of Polish nation, Jerzy Giedroyc, who used to say that there is no free Poland without free Ukraine. And that's probably the most important for today. Ukraine is bleeding. Ukraine is fighting with Russian Federation. And Russia is not hiding anymore its real target. So they stopped talking about liberation, as they said before, of Ukrainian lands. Now they're talking about destruction, meaning that the fate of Ukraine is very much dependent on the unity of all the countries, which from one side knows exactly what Russia is, from another side wants to live in one big European family. So that's why I don't see any alternative for strong and strategic partnership between Poland and Ukraine for decades and decades ago. So that's why I'm extremely happy that for the moment we have this top-level dialogue in Warsaw between governmental delegations from Ukraine and the Polish government. And I have no doubts that we will find the agreement, because this agreement is needed not for Ukraine. This agreement is needed for Ukraine, for Poland, and for Europe. I think after 2 years of big war in Ukraine, everyone shall finally understand the level of risk for everyone, not for Ukraine, but for everyone, and especially for the countries which are closer.
That's right.
Russian Federation.
I think not only politicians, but also citizens, Polish and Ukrainian citizens, understand that the situation is dire and we have to support Ukraine. That's without a question. However, when it comes, unfortunately, this grain situation emerged, and both leaders today talked about it. And I sense that, both sides, Poland and Ukraine, will need to make some sacrifices. And also, prime ministers talked about that. Can you tell us what sacrifice will Ukraine need to make and Poland when it comes to this grain situation?
Look, I don't think that we shall go to any details in discussions like that. I think as Polish people, as Ukrainian people, we elected on the free elections our parliaments. Our parliaments nominated the governments, and it is the job for the governments to conclude all needed agreements. It is their job. You pay money for your government from your taxes. We pay money from our taxes to our government. We hire these people to solve difficult problems. So that's why I see that they're working. They're trying to reach an agreement. And as we said a minute ago, both nations want to have this agreement, as Ukrainians, as Polish. So that's why let's see how this story will end it. And as fast as these disagreements will be resolved, as better for both sides.
I mean, I'm going to go very delicately on this. And I think we've been observing and watching this. And I think there was a bit of an uncomfortable shift if we go back to September of last year, were very much about certain types of these grain restrictions were not carried out. Then it was the unilateral decisions. And we heard some very harsh language on both sides, from both the Ukrainian side as well as the Polish side. And quite frankly, some wondered where Brussels was in all this. So is this still maybe part of the problem, is that there is, they say that three is company, that there might be a bit too much from Brussels, and then if the bilateral relations between Poland and Ukraine might be better off almost without Brussels as well spinning the tables. Is there maybe too much of a crowd in this issue? I just want to touch that very delicately and get your sense.
Look, it's complex. It's complex, and for me, it's the issue of leadership. Definitely, Brussels probably was playing not such a bright role as it's supposed to be. From another side, we see the problems on Polish-Ukrainian border since August, if I'm not mistaken, right? August last year. But at the same time, the Polish-Belarusian border was not blocked by so-called farmers. And now we all know that during all these months, the Russian grain was coming to Polish market on the same low prices. So that's why I think we all very much underestimate the influence of Russian Federation and the spice influence of Russian Federation on the politics in European Union. And all that is very serious. And what I see now that finally Brussels and all our allies in Europe, they demand to block Russian grain export because it's damaging the European market, also extremely high. So finally, we are talking about this problem.
Let me jump in on that one, Andrii, because I'm glad you mentioned this, that it's actually a block, which unfortunately it isn't even. This is the thing, right? This thing from Brussels that was talked about last week is actually not even a sanction against Russian and Belarusian grain. It's actually very much only a sort of a tariff. It's not even necessarily that binding. It's just raising the price. And buyers could potentially still buy it. It can still transit through the European Union. So, I mean, many, I think, were wondering why not block that entire grain from Russia and Belarus, and why still let it through, why still allow for buying, because it's not a sanction. And I think this shows, again, my point is, you know, is Brussels doing really following up with actions as much as the words? So I just wanted to say that it's not even a block, which is interesting just by itself.
Well, if they can stop it, it just shows that it's harder than we think, probably, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with your point. And again, after almost 6 or 7 months of the problems in the Polish-Ukrainian border, we shall be wondering why we don't see these problems with Polish-Belarusian border. That's the big question. And this question is not only to Brussels, but to Warsaw also. But again, all this is very complex and delicate. And for me, it's the issue of leadership. And finally, now I think everyone in all levels, in all capitals, understand that it is the interest of all stakeholders of this discussion to find a mutually beneficial agreement. I respect the work of any farmer in Europe. I know about the problems of farmers in Poland, in France, in Belgium, everywhere. And definitely the Brussels shall take a leadership role in keeping the balance and keeping the balance of interest between everyone in the European Union. And definitely, especially the interest of Ukraine, which is fighting, in fact, on behalf of European Union with Russian Federation.
Well, hopefully they will take care of this, because farmers all in Poland and all over Europe are getting impatient. So it's good to keep farmers happy for sure. Now, last question to you. Kuleba today is in India. Obviously, he's going to talk about Russia, because India is close ally to Russia. What do you think will come out of this meeting?
First of all, I would not call India as an ally to Russia. I think that's wrong. Secondly, we need to remember that India is a huge player on the global map. Thirdly, we need to remember that India is democracy. It's not Russia and it's not China. India is a democratic country with democratic model of governance. So that's why, as European Union, as Ukraine, as United States, should have much better relations with India comparing to what we have now. So that's why I think, again, the picture is extremely complex, but improving and the growing of relations with India, it's a strategic interest for everyone who is calling himself as a free world. So that's why I expect that Kuleba knows what he's doing. And definitely we want much stronger relations with India. And definitely we want India to be stronger in supporting not Ukraine, but the position of the free world in fighting with Russia. So we need to hear the voice of India much stronger. We know that India is making a lot of money due to sanctions on Russia, but values shall be not sold for money. So that's why I think the position of Indian government and Indian president will be changed, mostly because they should be the part of the free world.
Yeah, it gets complicated also with BRICS in there as well, which is another topic for another time. Look, always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much.